Hi, this is Phil Potempa, and welcome to another broadcast of Notoriety. Each week we bring you everything you want to make sure you mark on the calendar, all those important dates and events that are not to be missed, everything happening in Northwest Indiana, Chicago, and beyond. And of course, this is the broadcast radio show, equivalent of all the columns and feature stories you'll read in the flagship print editions of the Post Tribune underneath the umbrella of Chicago Tribune Media. All those stories and columns are captured, of course, also at chicagotribune.com. We're just so glad that you are along for the ride with us. We couldn't be here without our generous underwriters and sponsors, our friends at People's Bank these past many years. Also, Andy and Sue Arnold, the wonderful arts advocates and supporters of so many community organizations we have here in our region. And Theater at the Center, our home away from home. So all of those are making sure that you're able to be a part of our conversation today. Some of you are tuned into our regular radio dial at 12:30 a.m. WJOB as we come to you from our Strachan Van Til Hammond studios. Others might have found us through streaming on social media, through YouTube, and thought, what is this about? I think I'm going to join in and see what's happening and be another voice around the table. I'm joined by co-host Luke Miiller returning. Hi, Luke.
Yep, good morning. Glad to be here.
And a friend to this side, Carolyn Jacobs.
Hello.
And Carolyn, you, first of all, are here today on behalf of, and then let's introduce our other guest.
The League of Women Voters of the Calumet area.
And?
And this is Sue Eleuterio, who is also with the League of Women Voters of the Calumet area.
Very good. And you brought with us an important message, and including a span of dates. This is the time to act right now, which we want to stamp this broadcast. Just in case you're hearing as a rebroadcast, we're coming to you today, Tuesday, March the 10th, 2026. Just so you know, when you're hearing dates for this upcoming exhibit, what opportunity do you have before that window closes? So tell us what brings you in today, ladies.
All right. Well, we're excited to be here. The League of Women Voters of the Calumet area has just completed installing an exhibit at the Hammond Public Library. And our exhibit is called A Right Worth Fighting For. And Sue and I, along with a few other colleagues, had the opportunity to go into the archives at the Hammond Historical Society, which is housed right there in the library. And we went through the boxes of archival materials and found a lot of interesting artifacts that tell the story of the League of Women Voters in the Calumet area. The organization has been around for over 100 years. We started in 1920, before we even had the right to vote, and then has been going strong ever since. And back in 2020, we had planned to do a big launch of our 100-year anniversary, but because of COVID, it sort of got sidetracked, so we're here now to try to tell that story.
We mentioned Theater at the Center earlier, and that was the same situation. 2020 was going to be this big 30th anniversary, and 2020 was the year that wasn't, right? Other than we didn't leave our living rooms too often, but we're glad that we are here. I mentioned today's broadcast interview is happening on March the 10th, so Tuesday, March the 10th, 2026. This exhibit is open for what span, so folks can plan?
Okay, so it's here now through St. Patrick's Day. March 17th will be the last day.
Okay.
And then we hope to travel it to other libraries, so stay tuned for the future dates.
So this sounds like this could also work into a wonderful print piece for the Post Tribune to let those other communities know, hey, though the window might be closing here, we should maybe bring it to fill in the blank, right?
Correct.
This is good. This is a time to do it. How about Luke?
Well, I was really interested by you saying that you found some of those artifacts at the archives. Are there a couple that you could share that were particularly intriguing to you?
Oh, sure.
Yes, and we're really lucky because Hammond has such an amazing. I'm a professional folklorist and museum curator, and I was just really knocked out by the fabulous archives at the Hammond Library. So one of the things they have are the record books of the League of Women Voters going back to 1910, and it's an amazing collection because at one point there were different separate League of Women Voters in Highland and Munster and Crown Point and Hammond. And it's really fascinating to see the activity that was happening in the 1940s, and 1950s, the 60s, all the way up. So that's part of what's really interesting. There's also, in their collection, are 2 dresses that we chose to display to show the suffragettes. And one of our favorite pieces is a photograph in Hammond in 1910 of women riding in a float for suffrage, for women's suffrage.
Oh, wow. That is phenomenal. And as Luke was saying, it had to be tough to whittle down what to include when you have so many opportunities. I think our producers got a few things that will float across the screen that maybe you can help describe. So we're seeing the tables as they're designed here with some frame pieces, correct?
Yes, so the book that you see there laying in the middle of that case is the very first meeting minutes from 1920. July 1st was our very first meeting. And then surrounding that are some of the historical photos that Sue mentioned that show the Hammond women on their parade float, and then portraits of some of the early suffragists that were from Hammond. It was so cool to get to know these ladies and that they were doing the work long ago. We also encountered a fun story of a woman from East Chicago who kind of got everything going. Laura D. Floyd is her name, and she was a member of the National League of Women Voters, which started in Chicago in 1920. Then she lived out in East Chicago, and she went around to all the different communities in Lake County and got women together to meet and learn about the vote, and then started up all of these different organizations. So there was a league in Hammond, East Chicago, Crown Point, Lowell. So all these different areas had their own leagues, and it was all due to the wonderful work of this woman, and we're still trying to learn more about her. We couldn't even find a photograph of her, but because of the newspaper articles, which I know you'll appreciate, we have a wonderful history of all the things that were taking place in 1919, 1920, all the way through today. So,
well, and again, for those who are on our traditional radio dial and you're hearing what we're talking about, we're describing these incredible glass cases at the Hammond Library filled with rare artifacts, clippings, framed photos, and pieces. Sue, on the monitor there, can you see some highlights that you might want to describe? Anything on those shelves that look familiar to you? I think I might even see a hat there in the corner on it. Looks like
we included some artifacts from the different time periods. So cameras, teacup, a hat. Again, one of the things that's great about the archives is they have these, you'll see these pamphlets that talk about the right to vote and voter education, which are things that the League of Women Voters is still working on. The other thing that's at the library right now is a traveling exhibit from the Indiana Historical Society on suffrage in Indiana, which is its own interesting story. And they include the fact that for a while, African American women really didn't have much of a say in the suffrage movement, so they started their own suffrage movement to make sure that they had the right to vote.
So look at these. I'm looking at now, again, to describe for our on-the-air radio folks that are just on the radio dial, these large pylons or kiosks, which are informational boards. This is still all in the library and in the atrium of the Hammond Library?
Yes.
Who created those for you? Those are massive.
So those panels, that's the traveling exhibit that came from
Okay.
Indianapolis, and it'll
It
be there at the
pairs so
same
well.
time. Yes,
great.
yes.
Oh.
And so that talks about 100 years of suffrage in Indiana, and then ours is more focused on Lake County, the Calumet
It
area.
fine-tunes it,
So
okay.
yes, yeah. So it was really fun that we found out. We were actually going to do our exhibit later on in the year, and then we found out this was coming to Hammond, and we're like, oh, we have to
Oh,
do it
yeah.
here. Yes,
Exactly.
yeah.
But
So-
it would be great, again, just another, we've got so many exciting things happening in this year with our celebration. This is something that could live on with another second go very easily.
Absolutely.
I'm just glad to see that an exhibit like this is existing, because a lot of the time, if someone like you two weren't able to come in there and get those pieces and those artifacts, they would be sitting in the archives collecting dust. Whereas now, with them being used, you have people like Lauren Floyd being discovered and being learned about by so many people that she had such a monumental impact, it sounds like.
I think so too. And the other thing, I think younger people don't realize what a fight it was to get the right to vote. And we take things for granted now, because we've always, I've always been able to vote ever since I've turned 18. But a lot really went into that happening, and there were hunger strikes, and there was, protests and all kinds of things, and we had to fight hard to get the right to vote, but also to maintain those voting rights. It's an ongoing battle.
I might be the only one in our studio, or perhaps maybe Carolyn might, or Tony Panic, who's off camera. But one of my first times, I think, being introduced to all of these powerful women that had a voice and were fighting for this right would be in the 1970s growing up on Saturday mornings during cartoon time, which that used to be a thing on Saturday mornings. It was the only time you could really watch cartoons. And there was something called Schoolhouse Rock.
Oh, yes.
And one of those segments was devoted to women, and it interspersed animated with real pictures of women that fought so hard to get just out of the kitchen where they were delegated and relegated to what was supposed to be just running a household task, that they deserved to have a much greater voice and a role in leadership, right?
Absolutely.
Anybody remember Schoolhouse
I
Oh,
Rock?
yes,
love it.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I have younger brothers and sisters, so yeah, I
We
remember
need
them
more
watching
Schoolhouse
that.
Rock
We
out
do.
there.
Too. It
You
needs
know,
to make a comeback.
it really does, because it was just so, again, it's ingrained in my brain. I can even just sort of hear that anthem in the backdrop of showing all these great archive photos and things. We mentioned the two of you, and it might very well just be these two Wonder Women right here. But just in case, are there other people that, well, it wasn't just us, there were many of us going through all these things, or no, primarily this was your project, you were the organizers?
We
No,
had
Barb
some-
Schilling
Yes.
from the league really helped us
Yes.
organize this as well.
Yes, and then Barb Hargrove was one of our helpers, and then Amanda Aguilera from the library. So the Hammond Library has an interesting partnership with the Hammond Historical Society in that they're housed in the same building, but they also kind of share that collection, and they both help maintain it. So that was an interesting thing for us to learn about when we were there. So
Anyone who's tuning in, you're hearing the voices in our conversation around the table. I'm your host, Phil Potempa, for this week's Of Notoriety on this March the 10th, Tuesday, 2026. Joe May, Carolyn, and Sue, on behalf of League of Women Voters, Lake County,
Yes.
and co-host Luke Miller, and we're talking about a wonderful exhibit that's up right now until St. Patrick's Day is the magic date. Circle on your calendar at the Hammond Library. And when I think of Hammond Library, is this the one that has that remarkable giant clock on
Yes,
display in the
yes,
main lobby?
yes.
So very easy to get to, plenty of parking, because folks will be hearing this in Porter County and all of our other spaces. Now's your chance for doing a trek. Anybody by chance have a website, just so folks might know hours, or if they're saying, how do you get to be a part of the League of Women Voters? I want to be involved in that organization. Who's going to be the helper with all that info?
Okay, so the website for League of Women Voters of the Calumet area is www.lwvcalumet.org. And if you want to learn more about the library, it's www.hammondlibrary.org. And the Hammond Library is located at 564 State Street in Hammond.
And you know, the League of Women Voters, of course, have this wonderful exhibit. You do so many other things as well. You assist with just that nudge and reminder about get out and cast your vote. That's anybody to everybody. You shout it from the rooftops. There are times, I know your Porter County sisters across the county line, they've hosted Meet the Candidate nights or forums or things of those nature. So there's a number of things on your roster your organization does, correct?
Yes, so what I found interesting while we were researching the exhibit was the things that we do today are very similar to what the women were doing over 100 years ago. So when they got the right to vote, they were ready for it. They wanted to learn how to cast a ballot. They wanted to learn about the different issues. They wanted to learn about the candidates. So very early on, they would have lectures and have people come and talk about the issues. They would have candidate forums, and they would teach people how to actually vote on the voting machines. And we do all of those things still today.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And we also do voter regardation, and we participate in the naturalization ceremony
And
when new citizens
we
are.
talked about some of these archive photos of our great women leaders of the past on a float. Have you ever been known to be in a parade? Is your organization ever in a parade?
Yes. So, I guess a few years back, the Crown Point parade, the women wore the our group wore their
For
suffrage
Independence
dresses.
Day, for the 4th
yes,
of July?
Yes,
Oh,
and
that's great.
And we hope
The
to be there.
sashes.
Yes, and we're going to try to do that again this year for the big parade
Oh,
on
yeah.
the 250th birthday.
Oh, that's
yes.
so wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, like you say, that with some of these themes have repeated over time as things change, they really stay the same. Really,
They
it's
do.
interesting over 100 years.
When I was trying to spot one of these for our producer Adriana, I think in the original long case, did I see a giant one-wheel bicycle?
Yes.
Or do I need to get my glasses adjusted in the longer one, not the upright one, but the first one? Is there oh, yes, look at there.
Yes.
They really rode those. Have you ever seen one of those before, Adriana? No. They had to keep a good balance, but
Where
that
are
was
the
the
pedals?
1920s, right?
Yes,
Right.
it
Luke,
was.
you've never seen that before
I've
either?
seen it, but how do you pedal it? It's
Well, that's a good question because normally it would be in the center of the wheel, but you're so tall and so high up. It looks kind of like a giant tricycle, but for those that are tuned into our radio dial, it does not have the dual wheels in the back. It's just this very skinny giant. You picture them going through the park and maybe having an ice cream social or something,
Yes.
right? Back in those wonderful days. I'm amazed at how well this is preserved, and usually these are the types of archives where you're putting on white gloves because that paper can even be very fragile with a
Yes.
newspaper clipping as well.
with that. Were there any artifacts that you were thinking, oh, this would be a great addition to the collection, but for one reason or another, they weren't able to
Or it's
include
too
it?
valuable.
Some
maybe
of the
to be
journals are
moved.
pretty fragile, and I'm actually trained in museum curatorial
Oh.
work. So Adriana and I did have a conversation about, how do you decide? And she pointed out that one of the problems with white gloves is sometimes when you're handling really fragile paper, the glove's actually worse than
Because of the fiber
because
in
of
there.
the fiber.
And in our fingertips, is it true that there's oils and
Yes,
acidity?
yes.
and
I
things?
always, when I've done museum work, I always ask everybody to hold up their hands and realize that they have acid in their hands, so that you do want to be careful when you're handling objects. But there are just boxes and boxes of records, and some of them are very fragile. One of the things I wanted to note that in the tall case is there are several pamphlets from the League from over the years, and they've always had a great sense of humor. So one of them shows a picture of Lady Liberty, and it says, "Unlike justice, we are not blind," which I thought was a great comment.
Oh, yes. That certainly is. And I'm guessing I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway. Were the folks in the librarian, the archivist at Hammond Library just wonderful to work with as a resource and there for whatever you needed?
Stunningly.
Yeah.
I mean, just so helpful, and helped us make copies of photos, and helped us. We went through and made lists of everything we thought we wanted to use, and then we were able to go back, and everything was already had a
Yeah.
note on it, and it was just great. And she did all the labels as well, which is just really helpful.
I am a huge ambassador, proponent, cheerleader of all things libraries. Bookstores too, but especially libraries and anything that is a draw, such as this exhibit, to get folks in those buildings as resources. Not everything is in the palm of your hand to be found on Google or AI. A library to go and port through those books, and as somebody who came from a very rural environment of cornfields, our library was a one-room library. So as I became older, went off to college and had other experiences, to see these vast libraries with all these stacks, resources, and archives. I often tell when I would teach my students, which Luke was one of my students, not everything, again, can be found online. Get out there, and that Easter egg hunt can be so wonderful when you find things. I want to, as we close here, ask about the same kind of a question that I think Luke had asked or alluded to. Was there also anything in there, we don't want to make a light of anything, but anything that it clearly meant this was another time and another era where it said something about, I think I remember some strict rules. School teachers at one point, you could not be married and be a school teacher, or a skirt length, or a petticoat, or corsets, or anything that seems so, antiquated in today's world. Anything that made you lift your eyes a little bit,
Yes,
your eyebrows.
there are some printouts that you can see that we put up on the windows, and one of them basically, what did it call women?
Oh my God.
I mean, it was basically this idea that women were dangerous, you know.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, and that
To let
giving
have
them
too many
and
and
thoughts.
giving them the
Yes.
vote was really potentially a dangerous act.
And there was another one that I thought was fun that said there was a policy where they were going to make women have to reveal their age if they wanted to vote, and they ruled that they decided no, it was not necessary to reveal their age as long as they were 18. That's all we needed to know.
Adriana, you don't have to answer this, but could there still be some callers or some folks once in a while who are a voice on the air that maybe harken back to that time? Be careful of women to these fall, right? We've heard callers sometimes. So
Troublemakers.
yes, that's
Yes.
right, stirring that pot.
my goodness.
But again, I know I've written stories just from years ago, just about what it took to be a school teacher, and they were very strict. You had to be unmarried, and I think one of the rules for one of the schools was you weren't to loiter around the ice cream parlor as well, because and yes, and not to let another young man drive you in his carriage. They were so strict with these rules that you
Right.
know were not the case for the young men that were out probably rabble rousing at the pool room at the time. Exactly right. One more time, let's run through this. Anyone who's tuning in, or at least if you're scrolling and finding us on social media, you've got to be on board and hooked about seeing this exhibit. I know I am, which is the reason why it's going to be fun to write a print piece that can be a companion with today's broadcast. Who would like to do the honors for the wrap up here?
Okay, I will. So we have two exhibits on display now at the Hammond Public Library. The first one is A Right Worth Fighting For, the history of the League of Women Voters of the Calumet area. And the other exhibit that's from the Indiana Historical Society is Securing the Vote, Women's Suffrage in Indiana Over the Last Century. So we have two exhibits at the same time celebrating Women's History Month. They will both be on display until March 17th, St. Patrick's Day.
Very good. And again, if somebody's hearing this and thinking, I want to get involved in some way, we need to have that information. Then also the information on the Hammond Public Library, where to find out more, and an address.
Okay, so Hammond Public Library is located at 564 State Street in Hammond. And if you would like to learn more about the library, it's www.hammondlibrary.org. And then if you would like to know more about the League of Women Voters, it's www.lwvcalumet.org. And we happen to be having a cafe night tomorrow evening at the East Chicago Public Library, the Pastrick branch, from 6 to 7:30. So if you're interested in joining the league and helping us work on securing, maintaining voting rights and registering voters, please join us for that. It's an informal evening, and you'll get to meet a lot of great people. And it's not just for women.
Very good. Please
Yes.
come back again. I feel like we just barely touched the surface of so many more topics and areas. And again, that website for the Hammond Library will be key for those of you coming from anywhere throughout the county or one of the neighboring counties or over the state line. You want to plan your day accordingly with library hours so you can get there and have enough time to peruse and read everything and see everything in due time. So that website will be of great value too. Thank you to our guest today.
Thank you.
Thank
Co-host
Phil.
Luke Miller, thank you. Producer Adriana Alvarez, thank you so much. And to you, all of our listeners and our viewers, for tuning in and being part of our conversation. I'm your host, Phil Potempa, wishing you well no matter when and at what time you're hearing our broadcast. We hope that you have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, or wherever your path might take you.